Okay, so good day everyone. This is Taker Amtagupa of BS and Math 3, and today we are going to talk about the chapter 8 of this subject. So before we proceed to our topic, let us have an activity first. So I have here a set of boxes and blanks. So these blank boxes right here contains words that is defined in this clues right here. So this is the meaning. And then these three words right here will obtain what could be the letter in each these five boxes above. So the corresponding numbers right here will then have that letter to be placed in the boxes above. So are you ready? Okay, so first word. It refers to the possession of sufficient knowledge, skill, and ability to perform a specific task or job effectively. So the answer for that is competency. Next, it is the totality of student experiences that occur in the educational process. What would be the answer for that? Okay, so the answer for it is curriculum. So we obtained already the four words, letters right here. The words, letters 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we only have the fifth letter. And what could it be? Okay, so the third word, it is something that needs great mental or physical effort in order to be done successfully and therefore tests a person's ability. So the answer for that is challenges. So based on these three, we obtain the topic for today, which is the maths or MELCS. So are you ready to know about maths, of its definition, the reasons why it is formulated, and as well as the characteristics and the job characteristics of the maths? So we were going to talk about that in this video. So we have the title of our chapter, Chapter 8, Curriculum Modification in Basic Education during and post-pandemic. So let's have the challenges faced in basic education during pandemic. So these challenges are evident during the pandemic, and this affects to the basic education that we have during the pandemic. So first is the disruption of learning environment. So the sudden shift of online learning caused disruptions to the face-to-face interactions or face-to-face classes of the student in school. So diba, we are aware naman that the face-to-face classes became online classes, modular classes, blended learning, and the self-learning modules, right? So that is one of the challenges faced during the pandemic. So next we have the access to technology. So the access of technology became a challenge because not all students have the access to electronic gadgets, or they are not able to access internet connectivity, hence, or they are not technologically literate. So that became a challenge for the students to have proper basic education. Next, the lack of interaction. So the physical distancing measures resulted in reduced face-to-face interactions, affecting the students' social and emotional development. So the students were not able to physically socialize in schools, and they were somehow demotivated to go to school because their friends, they are not together with their friends in school. So it became also a challenge in the pandemic. Last is the balancing competencies. So creating a balanced competencies between relevant, desired, and essential learning outcomes became a challenge because the modality became limited, diba? Because the online classes permits you to have internet connectivity, or the self-learning modules needs you to have printers and such. So it came to the thought that balancing what could be the essential competencies that could be included in the basic education of the students comes to their mind. Okay? So these four challenges were thought by the curricularists. So they thought what could be or what would be the solution for this problem. So they then obtained the MELS, or what we call as the most essential learning competencies. So before we define what is most essential learning competencies, let us have these three quotes right here. So, avoid inch deep and mile wide teaching. I cannot see the trees because of the forest, and less is more. So these three are more like more defines the most essential learning competencies. So from very big forest of learning competencies to a small trees. Okay, small group of trees, or they refer to it as the most essential learning competency. So that became the reason why they formulated the NALS. Okay, so what are most essential learning competencies? So the most essential learning competencies as defined by DepEd, or as defined by DepEd, are what the students need, considered indispensable in the teaching learning process to building skills to equip learners for subsequent grade levels and subsequently for lifelong learning. So all learning competencies that are included in the most essential learning competencies are essential to the lifelong learning skills of the students. So from big forest to small group of trees, that is the most essential learning competency. Okay, so as the challenges came across during the pandemic, the Basic Education Learning Continuity Plan, or LCP, streamlines the K-12 into MELS to enable the department to focus instruction to the most essential and indispensable competencies that our learner must acquire even if in different learning modalities. So it means that the most essential learning competency must be essential, of course, and not too redundant as they go through the different levels of basic education. So I have here the characteristics of most essential learning competencies, of what could be the characteristics why that certain learning competency were included to the most essential learning competencies. So we have, first, it is aligned with the national standards frameworks. So the Philippine basic education, or the educational framework, have that national standards that are expected for students to attain at the end of their educational attainment in basic education, like from K to 12, from kindergarten to grade 1 to grade 12, they are expected to develop these skills. For instance, holistic Filipino learners with 21st century skills. Next, they connect, the most essential learning competencies connect the content to higher concepts across content areas. So it means that the content is, the learning competency is not only limited to that certain learning content. So it can also be applied to another learning content. For instance, in mathematics, you need to determine or to know the algebra or the basic operations, as well as the derivations of the formula from x and y and like that, because in physics you need to develop computation skills, because in physics you need to compute also for the velocity and all, and it involves mathematics. So that's how it became most essential learning competency. Next, they are applicable to real life situations. So it means that learning competency is not only limited to what they have in school or to what they are going to learn in school, will also be applied to outside world or to the real setting. Okay? So next, we have most essential learning competencies are important for students to acquire even if the student drops out from school. So it means that even if the student will no longer go to school, it is still essential for him or her to that learning competencies will be used to their daily living. So dili siya makalimutan and it is still essential. Last, they cannot be expected to be ordinarily learned by students if not taught in school. Like, what comes to my mind first is that calculus. You don't learn calculus in streets, right? So, and trigonometry or basic sin, cosine, and all of that, you cannot learn that in streets. So, you can only learn that in school. So, if that learning competency is have that characteristic, it is then included to the most essential learning competency. Okay, so those are the 5 characteristics that the Department of Education has defined. So we have here the general rule to determine whether the most essential learning, the learning competency will be included to MELC or not. So a learning competency is retained if they satisfy the endurance criterion. So what is that endurance criterion? So it contributes to the lifelong learning skill of the student and is a prerequisite for the next grade level. So if you're in grade 1, you need to learn first the numeracy before you start the operations. Okay? So that's how it goes. So since we have defined already the characteristics of learning competencies, let us have the reasons why they were not included to the learning competency, to the most essential learning competency rather. First, we have the learning competency is too specific. So, the learning competency must not be too specific or not too broad. So, that's how it is. So, if it is specific but not too specific, then it is included to the most essential learning competency. Next, they are deemed appropriate to be taught in an earlier or later quarter or grade level. So, it means here that certain learning competency can only be can also be learned in other grade level. So it is no longer important for you to relearn it in the next level, right? It becomes redundant. So that is the third here. It is redundant, recurring, and repeating. So if it is repeating, you cannot include the learning competency to the most essential learning competency. Lastly, it is subsumed in another learning competency. So it means that the learning competency is like under siya sa learning competency. So it is too specific or too broad. It is not, then it will not be included to the most essential learning competency. Okay, so after thorough deliberation of the curricularists, they have obtained out of 14,171 learning competencies from the previous set of learning competencies. They obtained 5,689 most essential learning competencies in this current learning competencies. So that is 60% of the 14,171 learning competency. So they have it here. It's like 40% of it were not included to the most essential learning competency. So it's more than half of it were removed. So it is then considered that these 5,689 are most essential learning competencies. And then as a conclusion, most essential learning competencies are competencies that must be included in the curriculum that are essential for the lifelong learning skills of the student and is not only limited to the school setting but also in the real setting. So I hope you learned something from my discussion in this video and hope to see you soon. Thank you so much and thank you for watching.